Well, let's go back to our main story. The UN Security Council's condemnation of Syria's use of force against civilians. We can speak to Hama al-Azm, who's a Syrian-born professor of Middle East history at Shawnee State University in Ohio. He's on the line now. Professor, you were in Hama after the 1982 massacre. Are you concerned about what is happening today and that this could be a repeat of what happened in 1982?
Oh, most certainly. I mean, the regime is very intent on making an example of Hama once again. The level of violence, the escalation that we have seen in the last few days has been totally disproportionate. And it's very clear that the fact that Hama had reached critical mass in terms of the size of the protests, and that this was slowly, rapidly spreading to Deir ez-Zor and other cities, worried them enough to be willing to risk international condemnation, isolation, and everything else, but in order to try and put an end to this as we start entering into Ramadan.
Do you think the condemnation that the UN have given now, will it have any effect on President Assad?
Well, I'm not sure how much effect it will have, considering how feeble that condemnation has been. I mean, if you read the actual text itself that came out of the Security Council, it as much sort of almost gives them a license to carry on, as far as I can tell. There's no real substance to that condemnation. I mean, it's a step in the right direction, and we're happy to hear that, but we need much more than that. The people of Hama are dying on the streets every day now, and they need to be helped.
And what is their position now? Because the army are loyal to President Assad. There have been some defections, but this isn't the same situation as, say, in Egypt or even in Libya. Indeed.
Well, when we say the loyal is army to President Assad, I think we need to be very specific here. The 4th Division is very loyal to Assad. Many of the perhaps senior generals who are Alawis are still loyal to the regime. But the vast majority of the Syrian army is made up of conscripts, and those conscripts really do not have a say. And in fact, we know that those members of the army who have tried to break away, who have tried to escape, who've refused to obey orders, have been shot. In fact, when you do hear of casualties within the ranks of the army, more often than not, and more likely than not, it's been because they've been shot for disobeying orders or attempting to break away. We have, I think the figures I have now, of over 2,500 soldiers deserting or refusing to obey orders to open fire. And in fact, recently, only a few days ago, there was a call for reserves, and something like only 2,000 out of 13,000 turned up.
OK, Professor Hama al-Azm from Shawnee State University in Ohio, thanks very much for sharing your expertise with us. Now, let's cross over to Rico, because Rico, China's middle-class city dwellers are taking to the soil in search of the good life.